So we just got a brand new 2023 Bronco Wiltrak with the HOSS 3.0 system, and I got on all the forums and there's not a lot of lift options for us. So I ended up going with the RPG Perch collar kit, and I'm doing the install. I've got the coilover out of the truck, and I ran into a couple of issues and I couldn't find any videos online, so I just kind of want to explain some troubles that I ran into, and I hope this helps y'all out. Harbor Freight's death compressors. I did get on the forums and somebody mentioned if you buy 2 kits and use 3 spring compressors, it reduces the pucker factor tremendously, and I can attest to that. It's still sketchy as hell, but wasn't nearly as bad. One of the things that I ran into, this is the second front, you really have to pay attention to the alignment. You want the spring, the collar, and the mount at the top to go back in the same way that it did. I had to take the front one apart twice because I got it wrong and I marked it. Ford did us a favor. There's a tag and paint along the line of the reservoir, and what I figured out is if you draw a line across the 2 bottom shock mounts, 90 degrees perpendicular to that is where the inside shock bolt needs to go. So I'm not even going to mark this one. I've already done it once. I've got a real good idea. This needs to be in line with the reservoir, and these paint marks, they were the same on the other side. They're in line with the reservoir, and that's what I'm going to pay attention to. If you get this wrong, you'll be doing it again because it will not go back in the truck. You have to make sure that this stays in line. Otherwise, it's not going back together. So I'm just going to make sure one of my spring compressors is going to go just offset from the reservoir, and that's only so that it's easy to get my electric impact on it and compress the spring. And I'm just gonna space 3 of them out as evenly as I can and do the best you can. I spray WD-40 on the threads of these spring compressors just to reduce the possibility of galling and kind of reduce the friction. There's a lot of force at play here. I am going to remove the spring from the assembly just as a safety precaution. Part of the thing, and you'll see it in a minute, there might be a cowboy out there that could pull this off without taking it completely apart. I don't think it's possible. I really struggled with this collar trying to get it off, and got on YouTube and found some videos, and I'm going to explain that later, but this collar is really stiff and you have to use a hammer to knock it down to install the perch collar, and I don't want to be hammering on this while the spring is compressed with these fantastic spring compressors. And I'm just going to use an electric impact and go evenly around the whole spring. Safety first. So I've got slop. The spring and the shock assembly will move independently now. I'm going to go ahead and remove the spring, and in order to do that, there's an 18mm that holds the shock in the mount. When you start taking this off, it is going to spin the shaft, and I don't know if they still make these, but I have this Craftsman wrench that is meant for long bolts that'll run all the way through it, and I'm gonna hold the shock shaft with an 8mm to keep it from spinning, and we're gonna go ahead and break that loose. Yeah, now you can see the importance of lining this all up. As soon as you break this loose, the shock wants to spin. And if you just tighten it back down exactly how you took it off, you're gonna have problems. Now, I found a video that said to use a dead blow to knock this collar off, and I wailed on it for 20 minutes with a rubber mallet and it didn't move. So I'm just going to use a ball peen, but go back and forth.
And it will eventually start to move. Just be, I don't know if this is some type of phenolic resin or if it's metal. I don't know what it is. It feels very strange, but you just have to take your time and go back and forth. And it'll eventually start to move. Starting to open up now.
These collars lock it in place. We're not reusing those. There weren't, RPG doesn't have their instructional video up yet. So I may be telling y'all how to do this completely wrong. When their video comes out, don't watch this anymore. Go look there first. On the inside of this collar is a groove or a flange that lines up where these two collars just fell out of. The reservoir is on the inside of the vehicle, and I am going to represent for RPG. I'm going to put their collar facing the outside. Use my grubby paws to wipe this out. I don't know if you're supposed to use Loctite, but I'm putting Loctite on these because I do not want them shaking out. When you are putting this together, you're going to notice there's a gap, and I assume that's for some amount of clamping force. Because if they were machined perfectly, there would be no way to tighten it on here. I'm not going to break out feeler gauges or anything, but I am going to pay kind of close attention and try to get that gap as even as I can. So the gap's a little big on this side. And I know from scope mounting that you just have to play with it and go back and forth. I'm gonna take a little tension off this side and let it open up some. Back to the other side. And tighten it up. Gap's pretty close. These aren't real big screws. I don't know torque specs on them. I could look it up, but I'm not. Just go back and forth over all the screws. When you tighten one, it loosens the one up next to it or takes tension off of it. Just go back and forth until they all feel snug. Now, the collar's on. The perch is there. We're gonna have to line it up with the spring and mess with that. While the shock is out of the way, we're gonna be super sketchy because we just added 1.5 inches to the overall length we have to get the spring to fit into. And now I don't have to mess with the reservoir or none of that stuff, so I'm gonna tighten the spring some more while nothing is in the way. And I suppose if I had a safety chain, now would be a good time to use it. But I don't, so I'm not. So when you have this compressed enough, you don't want to compress the spring with the nut that goes on the end of the shock shaft. So you need to compress it enough that this flange bottoms out up against the housing. And I don't believe I'm there yet, but I'm going to dry fit it and see how close I am. Yeah, I have a long way to go. I probably have 3/4 inch that I still need to get in there and close this gap.
Because I'm bottomed out here, and I still have a long way to go before that seats. So I'm going to keep compressing. Yeah. That noise and the fact that the shock still spins when I line everything out tells me that we're good to go. Now the critical part where you want to make sure everything is in line. And I don't understand, it may be the coil of the spring, the coil bind. I wonder, does the spring, does it?
But now you just reverse the process. There's still a ton of tension here. Go really slow and work your way out in a circular pattern. And then I'll show you putting it in the truck. It's kind of a pain, but you stab it in there. Upper control arm is broken free, the knuckles hang in. I did break the axle nut just to give me a little bit more play and everything. And I've got 6 foot, it's a fire poker I made, but it's gonna be my pry bar. This was a struggle, and it will be a struggle to get this pushed down low enough so you can get this back in there. Part of the benefit of the perch collar kit is we're not changing geometry, suspension geometry at all. The overall length of the coilover is still the same, so it's not like it's any harder than it was to get it out. It's just a pain in the ass. I fought with this initially and thought it was going to be impossible. And I just realized. Backwards. Which will help tremendously. Make sure that your sway bar and link is out of the hole, because it will fight you. It will get cocked in there sideways and it will not let you push down on the control arm. And the other side really fought me until I actually just came over here and broke this side of the sway bar loose and rotated it up and out of the way. There she is. So you just put it back together. But that ain't fun.